Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. So Horus Week continues, with the Warmaster now well and truly under the sway of the influence of chaos. And today we're discussing Horus Lupercal seeking the Emperor's power, leading him to the dark pantheon themselves, the gods of chaos. Oh yes. Now, spoiler warning before we begin today, we will be discussing the events of the Horus Heresy novel, The Vengeful Spirit. And as always, I really recommend you read the novel for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore, for yourself. Not only that, but we help to support the Great Black Library and Games Workshop, because without them, we wouldn't have all this amazing lore to talk about. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, this story takes place during the heresy, of course. Fulgrim has ascended to demonhood, and Lorgar and Angron are assaulting Guilliman in his empire of Ultramar. And Horus has become aware of certain gaps in his memory. Where a Primarch essentially has perfect recall, Horus has found there was particular gaps. And so he used a library of the dead, if you will, on a planet named Dwell, which is kind of like viewing and interpreting dreams of long-dead remembrances and record keepers. And he does this to identify that the vagueness in his memory centered around the compliance of a world named Malek. He had been there before, with Fulgrim, Jagatai, the Lion, and the Emperor, to obtain compliance of this world, which by all appearance accepted it peacefully. The confusion then continues when the records show that they remained on this world for over 100 days. And then even more intriguing, if Horus was interpreting these dreams correctly, it appears the Emperor had been to Malek before, centuries or even millennia before the Wars of Unity, using the starship he arrived on to build the Dawn Citadel. And so Horus concludes that the Emperor needed a ship to arrive, but obviously didn't when he left. Now, personally, I find that a bit of a stretch. I mean, come on, the guy could have just left on another ship. But we'll go more in depth on these Emperor theories another day. Obviously, Malek is of huge importance, because the Emperor essentially messed with the memories of 3 whole legions after the event. So what does Horus do? Well, obviously, he heads to Malek and invades the world with the help of Mortarion and his Death Guard. And there's some pretty epic moments during the course of this, such as Horus going toe-to-toe with 10 Imperial Knights. Yes, 10 Imperial Knights. But the Warmaster will not be stopped, and eventually begins to unravel the strands of his memory. They enter a vast underground chamber with a lake at the centre, immediately giving Horus a sense of déjà vu. He remembers nothing, but every fibre of his being tells him he's been there before. He gets the memory of skimming rocks on a lake surface back on Terra with the Emperor, as if this lake wasn't a lake at all but some kind of window of time. Shadows where no shadows ought to be stretched over the walls, and 1,000 muttering voices seem to rise from the water. He glanced back at the Mournival. Could they hear the voices or see the shadows? He doubted it. This cave was not entirely of this world, and whatever was keeping it anchored was fraying. Just by being here, he was tugging on its loose threads. The image of bones and sinews returned. Something organic, the architecture of the mind. That's what you did here, he said, turning on the spot. You cut through the world here and reshaped us. Made us forget what we'd seen you do. Horus nodded to himself. This is the scab you left behind, Father. Something this powerful leaves a mark. And this is it. The bruise you left behind when you shaped your lie. The frayed edge pulled a little more. The scab peeled back. Ghost shapes moved through the cavern, given life by his picking at the wound in the angles of space and time. Each was numinous and smudged, like figures seen through dirty glass. They were indistinct, but Horus knew them all. He walked among them, smiling as though his brothers were here with him now. "The Khan stood here," said Horus, as the first figure stopped and took a knee on his left. A second figure knelt to his right. "The lion over there." Horus felt himself enveloped in light, cocooned by its cold illumination. He'd retraced the steps he'd taken almost a century ago, without even knowing it. Horus moved back, detaching from a rendering of his own body in ambient light. Like his spectral Primarch brothers, his radiant doppelganger knelt as a figure approached from across the lake. Gold fire and caged lightning. The Emperor without his mask. "What is this?" demanded Abaddon, his bolter raised and ready to fire. The figures were only now becoming visible to them. Horus waved their weapons down. "An imprint left over from days past," he said. "A psychic figment of shared consciousness." The ghost of his father walked over the surface of the lake, wordlessly repeating whatever psycho-cognitive alchemy he had wrought to reshape the pathways in his minds of his sons. "This is where I forgot Malek," said Horus. "Maybe here is where I will remember it." Axeman raised his bolter again, aiming it at the numinous being on the water. "You said that thing is an echo? A psychic imprint?" "Yes," said Horus. "Then why is it boiling the lake?" And so the truth begins to reveal itself. The Primarchs were there before, with the Emperor. The true memories beginning to appear. And of course, I can't not mention the memory of Horus sitting by a lake on Terra, skimming rocks with the Emperor. I mean, can you get any more classic father-son time than that? Give me a break from all this dark and heartless Emperor talk. The dude's skimming rocks with his son by a lake. But with that, a final psychic guardian left by the Emperor assails the intruders. And it's another incredibly tough fight, only falling to Horus and the Worldbreaker, forged by the Emperor's own hands. And with the being's destruction, Horus remembers everything. "Don't you feel it, my sons?" continued Horus. "Don't you feel how special Malek is? How singular among all the worlds we have won it is?" Axeman found himself nodding, and saw he wasn't the only one. Lupercal walked in a circle, jabbing a fist into his palm with every sentence. The Emperor travelled here in humble guise, and found the gateway to a realm of immortal gods. He offered them things only a god in waiting could offer, and they trusted him. They gave him a measure of their power, and with that power he wrought the science to unlock the mysteries of creation. Horus was radiant as he spoke, as though he had already ascended to a divine plane of reality. But the Emperor had no intention of honouring his debt to the gods. He turned on them, taking their gifts and blending them with his genecraft to give birth to demigods. The Emperor condemns the warp as unnatural, but only so no other dares wield it. "The blood of the immaterial realm flows in my veins. It flows in all of our veins, for as I am the Emperor's son, you are the sons of Horus." And the secret of our genesis was unlocked upon Malek. The gateway to that power is in Lupercalia, far beneath the mountain rock, sealed away from the light by a jealous god who knew that someday one of his sons would seek to surpass his deeds. And finally Axeman understood why they had come here. This would be the moment they rose to challenge the Emperor, with the very weapons he had kept for himself. Now, of course, Horus's words here have become a highly believed theory, that the Emperor made a deal with the Chaos Gods in return for power and or the ability to create the Primarchs. And as I said, we'll take a deep dive into these theories another day, but just listening to the words here, it sounds so out of character for the Emperor that we have seen. And yes, hands up, we all know I am as loyal a fanboy of the Emperor as you can get. But firstly, that the Emperor just popped into the warp for a chat with the gods of chaos and then haggled a deal. It just doesn't make sense to me. The Emperor is just completely and totally against chaos. There is no grey area here. He is the anathema, the true death to demons. The Chaos Gods fear him. For me, if the Emperor took anything from the warp, he took it by force. And why hide the memories of the portal? Well, it's been totally clear from the start the Emperor wanted to hide all existence of chaos from his sons, and indeed all of humanity, to remove humanity's dependence on warp travel. That was his entire plan with the Webway project, the pinnacle of his grand plans. Whether he was right or wrong to hide it is obviously open for debate with everyone. But for me, the deal with chaos theory just makes no sense, at least in the Emperor I choose to believe in. If you believe in the darker Emperor, then of course it does make sense. And like I always say, that's the beauty of the lore. We can choose to interpret it how we like. But continuing on, Horus and Mortarion head to Lupercalia, and the location of the gateway to the realm of chaos itself. Defeating the final guardians, they stand before the gateway. Mortarion looked up at the gate, clearly unimpressed. Horus saw his brother's expression and put a hand on his shoulder. "Don't underestimate what our father did here," said Horus. "He broke into another realm, a realm no other being has breached and lived. Such a journey would make the climb to your first father's hall seem like a pleasant stroll." Mortarion shrugged. "I don't care much what he did." He tapped the butt of silence against the body of the woman. "She was here to seal the gate. Do you think she succeeded?" Horus reached out and laid his palm flat against the black wall. He felt micro-tremors in its surface, too faint to be perceived by anyone save a Primarch. "Only one way to find out," said Horus, unsnapping the seals across his breastplate. "Take that Reaper of yours and cut me." "Cut you?" Horus shed his armour, letting each plate fall to the ground until he stood clad in only a grey bodysuit. "I was told this gate can only open in blood," said Horus. "So cut me, and don't spare the edge." And with that, Horus enters the realm of chaos. But fear not, we'll be peering into the warp tomorrow and discussing just what happened to Horus when he went to meet the gods of chaos. But what did you guys think of Vengeful Spirit? Did you enjoy this look at Horus? And just why do you think the Emperor hid memories of this place from his sons? Was it to protect them from chaos? Or was it something else? Something darker? As always, drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love to read them. A huge thank you to all my subscribers. Your support really means a lot to me. It truly does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too? But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.